Very well. I hope you can all hear me well. I hear some echo. However, I would like to thank you very much for attending this masterclass, which is a unique masterclass because we will be live with many cities in the Far East, Tokyo, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong. So this is a very rare masterclass, very special masterclass. And it's even more valuable because we have the chief winemaker from Valdo, Mr. Gianfranco Zanon, who during the tasting will describe the wines we are about to taste. And so, good morning, and thank you very much for your participation. I'm very happy to be here in Milan to tell you about the story of Valdo. The company was started in 1926. I'm an enologist from 2016, and unfortunately, I have already a long experience with vintages and harvests and tests because every year it's an innovation. And the climate is changing and it's changing all the paradigm of winemaking, and the enologists must adjust. I hope that through these 7 wines we will discover an interesting world of the bollicine, the sparkling wines, and in particular our Valdo Spumante. Thank you, Gianfranco. I don't want to just bore you too much because I'm a sales manager. I'm in charge of the Far East markets with a focus on China. And I would like also to greet also our friends in Shenzhen.
Valdo spumante de picio qui. Gezien een beetje qui. Que niet men iets zijn tasje of si van minien of ki.
I apologize for this Chinese introduction. I just wished the best to our friends in Shenzhen, hoping that next year I can meet them in China. So what can I say? We can start with a short presentation video by President Bolla, who is going to talk about the history of the Valdo winery, and then Gianfranco and myself will give additional details about the winery. Thank you.
The history of the Bolla family begins in 1883 when my great-grandfather Abele decided to establish a wine company with the objective to serve and sell his own wine in the locanda that was owned by our family. The locanda name is Gambero. Valdo was established in 1926 by 4 entrepreneurs. One was a doctor, one was a lawyer, one was a law consultant, and one was a farmer. The company at that time was named Società Anonima Vini Superiori, and in 1938 my father, in the name of Bolla Company, bought the winery. The winery then became Valdo in 1951.
So very well, this was the introduction by the President Pierluigi Bolla from Valdo Spumante, and I would like just to introduce the winery, starting from the name Valdo. The name Valdo identifies ourselves with a very clear, precise area that is very suitable for production of Prosecco di OCG. We are in Valdo Biadene, at the very heart of the so-called Prosecco land. And I always explain customers when I do the trainings. This is a winery that is about to turn 100-year-old, as it was founded in 1926. And of course, as I said, we are at the heart of the Conegliano Valdo Biadene area, which is the DOCG area. And we are very proud that recently the hills of Conegliano Valdo Biadene have become part of the list of the World Heritage Sites of UNESCO. And so this is an additional motivation, especially for me, but for all of us who work in this wonderful world of Prosecco, to spread more and more knowledge about our territory, our land, and try to make Prosecco known to the largest number of people possible. The Prosecco wine, but also our territory, which is truly very unique. Going back to the history of Valdo, so also mentioning what Pierluigi Bolla, our president, said. So the winery was established in 1926 with a group of grape growers who decided to start making Prosecco and Carzizze. And then at the beginning of the 1930s, with the Bolla family, especially Sergio Bolla, who was the founder and father of the current president. So Sergio Bolla decided to buy Valdo and to start making Prosecco. And from then on, Valdo has started its journey across Italy, but also abroad, because at the moment we export in about 22 countries, and I'm trying to add more and more. So to add and increase the number of countries where we are present. I would like to highlight that Valdo is still a family-run winery. Now we have Pierluigi, the second generation, and then we also have the third generation. So the children, his children are working at the winery, and so there is a very strong connection with the past, bond with the past, which we want to preserve and cherish. So thanks to Sergio Bolla, especially from the end of the 1950s, beginning of the 60s, Valdo started to become more and more known and popular in Italy and then abroad. And now I would like to leave the floor to Gianfranco Zanon, who will give you a quick overview about the history related to the types of products that we have been making in Valdo from the beginning until now. I would like to summarize our history, our journey in a very simple way, just to make you understand that it took about 40 years to plant our seeds, to grow important fruits. We all now talk about Prosecco, which is the most drank spumante wine across the world. Last year we exceeded 600,000 million bottles, and in the Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco we are about 100 million, so we have all in all 700 million bottles, 70% of which exported across the world. However, we have been working for many, many years. The company was founded in 1926. Remember that Valdobbiadene was heavily hit by the First World War, and also the Second World War. Our territories were badly hit. And so also our winemaking area was destroyed by these two world wars. And in our municipalities, many people died of hunger as well as of war. However, we have a very strong entrepreneurial character to restart. And so our wine growers and our winemakers decided to restore their vineyards, remodel the hills, which today are part of the UNESCO heritage, and have a very particular characteristic of these ciglioni, which are terraces that show very well the various layers of the hills. So please, I invite you to come visit, because the scenery is beautiful. The landscape is very unique and that you cannot find in any other place. In the 50s and 60s, well, by the way, Spumante Valdo was the first Spumante sparkling wine winery in Valdobbiadene, and Carpene Malvolti was founded in 1861. And all the others started working after the Second World War. And there was actually a restart after the two world wars. And in the 60s and then 70s and also 80s, we worked hard, first locally, then nationally, then internationally, to communicate this product, which I always say that is an icebreaker, because it has broken up the patterns of consumption of sparkling wines across the world. Until the 1950s, we had the metodo classico, like champagne, or the sweet sparkling wine like Moscato. So these were the only sparkling wines drunk in the cities above all. The bollicina, the sparkling wine from Prosecco and Conegliano Valdobbiadene, has been an innovation because it's not metodo classico. Actually, it's a dry Charmat method with a very specific production method to enhance the particular characteristics of Glera variety, which is a fruity variety, which is gaining a great success across the world. A success that started in the 80s when Valdo winery has always decided to blend innovation with tradition. And this winery has been one of the first to create the so-called rive, that is to say, use grapes from single vineyards to make our cuvée, Cuvée di Boy, for instance, and also with very interesting residual sugar, which is more dry, brut, about 10-15 grams per liter, to make it more international. Then in 1994, the Cuvée del Fondatore was created, according to the philosophy of the winery, to blend even more innovation and tradition. So with a light wine, not very alcoholic, with a 10% Chardonnay that was blended in the Chardonnay after spending 6 months in a barrique. So this is an even more international sparkling wine, and also it's a long Charmat method, up to 12 months. You know that Prosecco, the rule books, so the rules for Prosecco DOC and Conegliano Valdobbiadene DOCG require at least 30 days in the autoclave, whereas we do 12 months. So this means more investment, and this is just to give different particular characteristics to our product. Again, for the sake of innovation, in 2004, the first metodo classico was made, called Numero 10. So this is a pure 100% Glera Conegliano Valdobbiadene. The yield per hectare is about 110-115 quintals. Of course, not to reach the levels of champagne or other sparkling wines, but just to give a different message and express the potential of the sparkling wines from Conegliano Valdobbiadene. Of course, the company evolved, markets become broader and broader. We decided to differentiate ourselves. We decided we had also to make different sparkling wines. And so in 2010, we made Origine. Then the idea is to make a unique product, going back to the origins of the winery. You know that in the rule books, also indigenous varieties can be used, historical varieties like Verdisio, Bianchetta and Pereira. And so in this brut sparkling wine, which is generic and not DOC, we have this blend in the more dry version. Of course, the world has changed, and also Valdo looked forward. And in 2016, we presented our first organic, our organic Prosecco wine. And then over the last few years, certainly Valdo in the retail chains is a brand leader, both in Italy and in Germany, as a product that is a leader, which is the product called Marca Oro. And Valdo Spumanti is the first bottling company of Conegliano Valdobbiadene DOCG with a 10% market share. Valdo today Okay, I can continue with the slides. So, of course, Valdo is always looking ahead and forward. We've implemented a new photovoltaic plant in the new part of the winery that in 2004. 14, sorry, and now it's up and running, and so now we are autonomous, we have enough energy, and so we use 60% of renewable energy. In any case, all the electricity we use come from certified renewable sources. So we pay an attention to environmental sustainability and also social and economic sustainability. This is part of Valdo DNA. Last year, we also created our first document with all the actions and improvements we try to implement every day at our winery, from the water reduction of water consumption, optimizing the use of energy by optimizing the bottling systems, and this is something that is very important for me and also for Pierluigi Bola, because now we are at the center of our community, which is part of the historical city center. Because we also feel very much a responsibility towards our community, so this social responsibility. So we give contributions, donations and funds to the local authorities, because we don't want to advertise too much these aspects, but this is in any case very important, and by the Valdo winery and the Bola family deem that very, very important. So this is my presentation. I don't know whether Stefano wants to add anything else. Well, in closing, with your presentation, and I thank you very much for it, before moving to the most important part of that is to say the tasting, I have a couple of questions, because I travel a lot, and recently I went to South Africa. In some countries, there is not yet a clear definition, an idea of what Prosecco is. So they say it's bollicine, so sparkling wine, but in many wine lists in South Africa, Prosecco is put with the method Paxatix, so the champenoise sparkling wine in South Africa, but also in the Far East. So they know the Prosecco brand, but then if you ask for details, there is still some, if you allow me to say, some ignorance, some misunderstandings. Can you give me then some clarifications and definitions to identify the Prosecco wine? Where is it made? What kind of grapes are used, varieties are used? Okay. To enhance the Glera variety, which is grown in the hills of Conegliano Vardobbiadene, but also in the area of Prosecco d'Oschi, which includes Friuli, Venezia Giulia, and Veneto, except for Verona and Rovigo provinces, the Martinotti or Sciarma method. Martinotti developed this method at the end of the 1900s, so Martinotti invented this method, presented and designed, but then the industrial patent was filed by Eugène Sciarma, who patented it, and so that's why normally we call it Sciarma method, but I think we should call it metodo italiano, Italian method. I am a bit partisan, allow me to be a bit partisan. This method enhances the primary characteristics of the grapes of the Glera variety. Characteristics which are freshness, fruitiness, delicacy, lightness, pleasant flavors. And if we are lucky, so if the weather, the climate is favorable, our grapes are definitely perfect for this, because we have a base with a sugar content which is pretty low, about 15 degrees bubble, and then we can have wine bases around 9-10 degrees of alcohol that then must be put in the autoclave and for a short period of time. This process enables us to enhance the primary characteristics, the fruitiness, which actually in the European nomenclature does not exist, because we have the metodo classico, and often it's mixed up. And then we have the aromatic sparkling wines like Moscato, but Glera is considered semi-aromatic because we don't have the category fruity in the EU nomenclature. In any case, it gives great fruity sensations, which are like a apple, depending on the season, of course, and depending on the climate. It can be more green apple or yellow apple. Then when it evolves, it becomes yellow apple. And then we can have, if it's warmer, we can have peach and apricot and also tropical nuances in the, but also citruses if it's cold weather and if the wine is more dry. We go from extra brut to dry and demi-sec in Conegliano Valdobbiadico, so we have a wide range of residual sugar contents. The most distributed type of wine is the extra dry, which means slightly sweet, with 14-16 grams of sugar per liter. But the brut version and also extra brut versions, so with less sugar, from 15, 16 to 10, down to 6 or 5 too, give more interesting sensations and make us understand a bit more the true soul of this denomination, of this appellation, Conegliano Valdobbiadene, and its potential, so what you can achieve in our hills. And today we will taste both Conegliano Valdobbiadene and Prosecco DOC, but also generic sparkling wines, which we call generici. And you will certainly understand better what I have just described. Yes, we take a journey. Sorry if I interrupt you. We start from one of the flagship wines from Valdo, Uve di Boi, DOCG wine, and then we continue with other products from the DOC area, and then we end with the Spumante. And just quick technical detail. Valdo, as far as production is concerned, we apply the so-called long Charmat method. Can you please tell me more about that? Well, technically, we talk about Charmat method when we go from 1 to 5 months, and long Charmat method when we exceed 180 days, so 6 months on the yeast. But as I told you, our regulation for Conegliano Valdobbiadene and Conegliano Prosecco DOC require at least 30 days. And the Rive can be put on the market only 6 months after harvest, but in our regulation there are no other types of wines. Even though we're working especially for Conegliano da Valdobbiadene, we should be able to put on the market products that are a bit more advanced, more evolved, and more important than those we are tasting today, just for the market evolution and also because of the evolution of the tastes of the end consumers, of the end customers. Very well, very interesting. So we can start with the tasting. So let's wait that everyone has the first wine, which is called Cuvée di Boi. The first was 1982, and this year we celebrate the Boyle vintage, and we use the historical production regulation that was created in 1962, which we have used until 1980s, where we could use in the cuvée up to 25% of Chardonnay. In this case, this is Cuvée di Boi 2021. Cuvée di Boi comes from the Valle dei Boi in San Pietro di Balbotta. And I would like to do something. Remember that bubbles are also a celebration, so I want to toast to all of you. So cheers to all of you, first of all, because, bubbles also mean parties and celebrations. So, can you tell us more about this wine, Gianfranco? Yes, clearly, in these glasses, these are the best glasses to appreciate our bubbles. Because I always say that tastings, like all other approaches, start from the eyes. So, by looking at the bottle, we have to show the bottle, of course, so that our brain is wondering already, is it sparkling wine or not, because we don't see bubbles, but then we will perceive the bubbles in the nose. So I suggest our fizzer friends to put a bit more, otherwise it gets too warm too soon. So the Brut Conegliano Vardobbiadene for harvest 2021, that was a very interesting year, and I defined it, allow me to say, this was a champagne year, because we had a perfect combination between the ripening of the grapes with a malic acid that gives freshness to our products, because in all our wines we don't have malolactic fermentation, so the product has its original acidic characteristics from the grapes. So it was a fresh year with very good acidity that gives these lingering and pleasant wines. And what we would like to convey with this glass is the cleanliness. So a very clean nose, a very delicate nose, not aromatic, but a clean nose that evolves little by little in the glass, with fruity nuances of green apple, but mainly floral notes. In Cuvée de Bois, we have white flowers, wisteria, acacia, and these flowers that gives these fragrances of delicacy, unique delicacy. The blend, so of course this is 100% Glera, even though you can put up to 15% of international varieties such as Chardonnay or Pinot, or indigenous varieties such as Verdisio, Bianchetta and Pereira. Of course, these indigenous varieties, over the last decades, we lost them in our vineyards, also because of pests and diseases of the vines, because they are more sensitive to these pests more than the Glera variety. And so today the trend is to make these wines with 100% Glera like Cuvée de Bois. This is 11.5 in terms of alcohol content. 12 grams per liter residual sugar. It could be used for an aperitif or with appetizers and finger food, fish or risotto, always with delicate dishes. Because there is nice way of cleaning the mouth, this nice freshness. And what I drink Prosecco, what I look for, and I think that's one of the strengths of Prosecco, is this perfect balance between the right acidity, sapidity, savoriness, and this sensation of freshness that cleans the mouth. Certainly, the bubbles have a magic power, that is to say, to clean the mouth, and therefore it's very good to pair it with food. It's very trendy to pair it with food. We try to make spumante, not with 30 days in autoclave, but in Cuvée de Bois is up to 5 months in autoclave. 3 months in contact with the yeasts, and 2 clean, ready for bottling. Also to have a more ample wine, despite the Glera variety is not very structured, and that doesn't have the same amplitude of Chardonnay, for instance, or other similar varieties. Very well. Great. I think we have spoken enough about the first wine, and we can move to the second one. We are still in the DOCG area. So we are with our Cuvée 1926. Of course, there are some differences compared to the first wine. Then Gianfranco will explain us more about that. 1926, from the label you see, this goes back to the year of foundation of Valdo Spumante, with this vintage style from the 20s. We pay homage to our history and our tradition with this label. Certainly we do, and the majority of our wines are brut and extra brut. But as I told you earlier, the extra dry is still very much popular in Italy and abroad, because the consumers identify the Prosecco type, Prosecco Conigliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore or DOC, with these sugar characteristics. In extra dry, we have 15 grams per liter. And for Cuvée 1926, we have 16 grams per liter. Of course, there's no fixed recipe. You know, enologists like to manage every year differently. And so these characteristics are the average in the cellar and because every year is different, every vintage is different. So this is an extra dry and 11.5 degrees and alcohol content 16 grams per liter. That makes us appreciate the distinctive features of Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore. Certainly, this difference of 5 grams compared to the Cuvée di Boy makes you perceive very well the fruitiness, like apple, but also peach and apricot nuances. And again, very with slightly acidic, but very round and let's say very round sensation. The blend in this case is 90% Glera with 10% Chardonnay. Yes, we try to make this product more ample by adding Chardonnay, which is the base wine that is made in our denomination, that has characteristics that do not that kind of enhance the Glera grape and doesn't stop the Glera from expressing itself. And I also like the fruity note. Of course, the nose is important because the nose is what makes us say whether we like it or not, or to drink it or not. Of course, in the nose, we can perceive up to 400 olfactory sensations. And so we have a wide range of olfactory sensations. So we have infinite descriptors. On the palate, we have 5 descriptors only. Now we have 6 sensations, but there is no bitterness, that there is good savoriness and good depth and persistence. Are the special characteristics of Cuvée 1926. So extra dry because we have a more residual sugar compared with the previous brut. Just what about pairings? What food can we pair this with? Well, the best pairing it's any time of the day with your best friends. So pair it with your best friends. I don't know if this can be a suggestion. So maybe it's 5 o'clock somewhere in the world, and so it's certainly a passepartout. It's good for all palates. Can be enjoyable for. You can start a dinner, then you can continue with other wines. But these creates harmony on our palate because it has this nice roundness, and it invites you to drink more. Because one of the characteristics which sometimes are hard to find is to have a product that makes you want to. So I had a glass, I liked it, I didn't understand well, I want a second one. So it invites you to drink more. I think that this is the successful characteristic of Conegliano Valdobbiadene and Prosecco DOC compared to still wines. Many other wines are more structured, with more alcohol, more fragrant, but maybe we stop at the first glass. Of course, we always have to be wise, but of course, when you pair it with food, it's the best marriage. I forgot to say something important at the beginning. Aside from the glass, temperature is also serving temperature is key because the spumante must be kept in the cellar in the dark, and I always suggest to store all bottles standing up vertical, and you don't need, even though the French tradition requires that you keep them horizontal. I always suggest you keep them vertical at a constant temperature, and then put them in the refrigerator a couple of days before tasting, before drinking them. Not too early, because otherwise the wine would close too much in the refrigerator and would not express its pleasant and fresh nuances. In any case, of course, if you don't have a cellar and keep it in the fridge, it's not good to keep it under 30 degrees. So serving temperature is 5 to 6 degrees, and these kind of glasses make the temperature increase. Yes, now the glass is already 15 degrees. Because after some minutes it always goes up to 15 degrees. If you pour 100 milliliters, it would warm up more slowly. I have a question I'm often asked, especially when I am in the Far East, and these are important questions, and it's good to share knowledge about Prosecco. How long can a Prosecco bottle last once we open it? Well, once you open it, if you haven't finished it, it's a problem. This is an unofficial answer. Of course, bottles of spumante should never be opened alone, but in good company with someone else, at least two people. And so once you open it, you have to finish it. Of course, always be wise. But should this not happen for various reasons, preserve it with the stopper to keep the pressure a couple of days in the refrigerator, but not longer, because pressure starts to go down and you would no longer appreciate the original characteristics of the wine before you open it. Then you can keep it 8-10 days if it's kept in the refrigerator, but it would lose its main characteristics. However, I always suggest 2 people, 2-3 glasses during the evening or the afternoon dinner. Can be drank very easily, and then these pairs very well with pasta and risotto. Certainly not red meat, but this is a glass that can be certainly used throughout an entire meal. Let's move to the third wine. We are always in the Valdo area, in the DOCG area, and this is called Elevantum. Well, with Elevantum here, we change also the use of the product. So from the Horeca and retail, this is Valdobbiadene DOCG 2021. Residual sugar is always 11 grams per liter. And we have the original characteristics, freshness, fruitiness, but above all, floral notes from white flowers. Certainly on the palate we have this nice acidity, cleanliness, this slightly citric note that reminds us that 2021 was a year that was very interesting in terms of the ripening of the grapes. So the grapes have kept more the acidic content, which didn't happen in 2022 because we had in Europe, in northern Italy, in our hills, we had a very hot and dry summer. So 3 months from June up to July, we had virtually no rain, and so the acidic content of 2022 will will give spumante wines that are less acidic than 2021. In any case, we're working hard on them too. So that was a pretty complex summer, this summer. In any case, from the quality standpoint, I mean, yes, we were very lucky that we had perfectly healthy grapes and that have ripened very well. From 15th of August, we had some rain, and this helped us to have a more balanced maturation. Certainly, the acidic components are not like in 2021. Just to give you a figure, malic acid of the wines we are tasting today, first three wines, is around 2.53 grams per liter. 2022 will have malic acid from 1 to 2 grams maximum 2.5, but the average will be 2 grams. And that half gram of malic acid, which might seem irrelevant, actually is giving me completely different olfactory and gustatory sensations on the nose and on the palate. Very well. Now we can move to a new product, if you allow me this definition, because now we go to the world of Prosecco Rosé. Elevantum is a rosé. And why do we say it's a new product? Well, because in the regulation of Prosecco DOC, Prosecco DOC, we can have up to 15% Pinot Nero wines. Up to 2020, you had to vinify them in white, but now we can vinify them in red, and so we can offer Prosecco, Rosé Prosecco. We started selling it in October 2020, first in Italy and then in international markets. In the regulation, also a choice was made to have more quality. So this sparkling wine has to stay 60 days at least in the autoclave, not 30 like the 30 days like the white spumante. It has to have 10-15% of Pinot Nero vinified in red, and then the rest Glera, and can be sold from 1st January after harvest. So these are the characteristics, and the residual sugar can go up to maximum extra dry. So Brut Nature up to 17 grams per liter. So there is no dry and demi-sec for the rosé sparkling wine. This is a sparkling wine that accounts for 10% of Prosecco sales. So before we said last year Prosecco DOC sold 600 million bottles. It means in the Prosecco DOC denomination 60 million bottles of Rosé Prosecco DOC. Of course, the most bottled and sold is Brut and extra dry. And then just to speak more about this product. Here we are in the area of Prosecco DOC. Can you give us some figures also in terms of area under vines? Well, before I was saying that the area includes Friuli, Venezia Giulia and Veneto, except for the provinces of Verona and Rovigo. So the denomination is over 30,000 hectares of vineyards, like Champagne, the Champagne area that exceeds 30,000 hectares. Of course, the production is up to 18 tons per hectare, and is more, so yields are higher. And so last year we managed to bottle and sell over 600 million bottles all in all. Very well, so we can continue. Time is short, unfortunately. It's about 11. We have a few more wines to taste. And in any case, let's remain in the area of Prosecco DOC. Go back to a white sparkling wine. This is the Doral. Oh, no, wait, Stefano. I would like to say something more about Rosé. This 10-15% for Valdo. for Elevaltum, for Levantum Prosecco DOC 2021, the rosé. It means 10% Pinot Nero vinified with the cold maceration, so color extraction, but not tannin extraction, and the nose is fruity and floral, but also reminiscent of underbrush, like raspberry, blueberries, and wild strawberries above all. This is a brut version. This means 12 grams per liter. So we are borderline between brut and extra dry to try to make more people happy in Italy, but above all abroad. What would be the best pairing with Prosecco Rosé? Well, some fish. Scampi, for instance. But also I like risotto very much. So with no sauces, delicate. So for instance, a risotto with shrimps and zucchini, courgette. Okay, great. Let's move to the next one. That is from the same area, so the DOC area, 100% Glera. It's the Doral Extra Dry. Yes, and here again we go back to the original base of the production. This is 100% Glera. Residual sugar in the extra dry is actually not really extra dry. And so this is certainly the best aperitif ever. And this product is very essential, and it's kind of sharp because it has this characteristic that runs along this borderline that is leading to a very clear destination, which is elegance, pleasantness, and finesse. And again, this is with the Charmat method. All these products we taste today are made with the Martinotti Charmat method. As to the timing, 90 days, 60 with yeasts, and then the rest, 30 days, without anything ready for bottling. Okay, so we move towards the end of the tasting with a special product, but which, however, is gaining pretty good success abroad. Here we are in the category of spumante. So it's spumante, not Prosecco. And already the label tells you it's a special product called Origine, which already evokes a clear company strategy. That is to say, going back to the origin for the type of wine and that you want to make with this product. Yes, here we go to the initial strategy of combining innovation and tradition in terms of varieties. So we have Glera, that is always the lion's share. It's a majority is Glera, but in this specific cuvée, in this Origine Brut, we have some historical varieties, Verdisio and Pereira, that give some distinctive features to this spumante and make it very unique because the winery wants to propose on the market, nationally and internationally, its identity, so a specific identity that is certainly based on Prosecco Valdobbiadene, Prosecco Superiore, then Prosecco DOC, but also other alternative spumanti that can tell the story of the winery and the journey, this 100-year-old journey of the company. And so it's clean, fresh again, and also this vertical lean character, then of course we all have our subjective way to assess wines, but there is a good balance, a right balance. And I'm sure you all see that there are more aromatic notes. I mean, not too much, but it's more aromatic because of these varieties, especially Pereira, that gives more aromatic notes than Glera. And therefore, that gives this specific identity to this specific type of spumante. Brut, 11 grams of residual sugar, so not too extreme, still pleasant, and round. And what about food pairings? As an aperitif, certainly as an aperitif. These are always perfect with aperitifs. It could be just a simple crouton or a bruschetta with tomato for these acidic notes. Of course, it's more difficult to pair them with cheeses, but it can go well with fresh cheeses. Then, if we want, certainly one of the special things we have at home, we pair it with salame and especially the so-called soppressa veneta, which is a cured meat, soppressa veneta. So even though the European Community and the Food and Drug Administration are trying to lower the consumption of calorie food, these cold meats are very special, and certainly they have a plus, and they pair beautifully with this, with our bubbles, with our sparkling wine that cleans the mouth. So perfect pairing with salame. And then let's close with a wine which is unusual, atypical, but it's very popular in Asia, so I insisted to have it here. So I wanted to add it because of this, because it's a sweet, more sweet wine. So we close with Moscato. Moscato. Well, certainly the proposal we want to make nationally, internationally, must focus on sparkling wines in a global way. Certainly the sweet spumante, the Moscato spumante, is very much used. I have in drinking sweeter drinks or sweeter wines. And so Moscato, 100%, more aromatic sensations, much more evident, reminiscent of, let's say, citric notes, fresh notes. Residual sugar is pretty much 80 grams per liter, so sweet. Even though on the palate it doesn't seem very sweet, as far as that's my opinion. 7 degrees of alcohol, and I think it's a very worthy spumante to end a meal with a dessert, with a delicate dessert. I always suggest to avoid creamy desserts, so it's better to make pies with jam, with fresh fruit, cakes, but not creamy cakes. Very well. So we close our masterclass with this Moscato. I don't know whether you have questions. Feel free to profit from the presence of the enologist, who is the one who actually makes these wines. Also, those who are in Tokyo and Hong Kong, feel free to ask questions. Well, As far as sustainability with organic wines, organic wine production, I say in northern Italy we are still lagging a little bit behind for organic wines. And I say that organic glera also in our hills in terms of sustainability, which must be first of all for production, so that allows me to produce. And certainly the environmental impact is also important because in our hills we have farms and vineyards and farms. So that's part of our denomination. However, organic farming in the vineyards is very difficult, and especially the climate of the last 2 decades is hard to manage. Some years are very, very dry, where organic farming is possible, whereas 2021 in the first months was much more difficult. May 2021 we had rain 25 days out of 30 days, and that then organic farming is more difficult. And I always tell that to our wine growers, we have to tend to organic farming. Here we have 2 products. I forgot to tell you, we have the SQNP certification, the first 2 we tasted. They have this certification because they come from certified vineyards with this sustainable certification, whereby they only use active ingredients for the so-called integrated defense. And in the denomination at Prosecco in Conegliano Valdobbiadene and Prosecco Superiore, we have 4 or 5% of the surface, which has an organic certification. But then the products are just 2 or 3% of both appellations. And it's very tough because the climate is very important, so it's hard to then make these organic wines sustainable from the economic standpoint. Luckily on the hills we don't need to have too many treatments. We have 8-9 treatments maximum. In organic farming, for instance, in 2021 we did about 30. Then the environmental impact, of course, I use natural products, but in any case, I have an environmental impact with 30 treatments instead of 80 or 9. And then we have to we have to remember that there will be an evolution. I'm not against organic farming, but I am in favor of organic farming in vineyards where there is the right climatic conditions. Tuscany, perfect. Sicily, perfect. Umbria, very fine. But in northern Italy, I have some troubles with that. So if I want to be organic, but then I have no grapes to crush, I don't get the result home in the end. I hope I was clear. There are studies, we are working, and copper until recently could be used in 6 kilos per hectare. In the organic certification, now we can use 4 kilos, but that copper, which is the only thing against the mildew, this only thing I can use, so the copper remains in the soil and on the leaves. And in any case, even though it's a natural product, it's a heavy metal that is going to impact and pollute the environment. So I prefer, and this is happening, I prefer that there is continuous research to have more and more resistant vineyards and varieties, less and less treatments, and with products that degrade after a few days so that no residue is left in the soil. I think this is the right way to pave. I don't know if I answered enough to your question. And also something else that is very important for Conegliano Valdobbiadene, we have 8,000 hectares of vineyards, but actually we have always had a great biodiversity naturally, and nobody needs to certify it because in our appellation, Conegliano Valdobbiadene, we have 11,000 hectares of forest, of woods. So that ensures great biodiversity. Yes, so we have 2 questions from Tokyo. The first is the following. many liters is the autoclave for re-fermentation. And also, they are asking about other trends in the Asian markets except for Moscato. You answer the first one, I answer the second one. Well, Valdo autoclaves go from 6,000 liters. We have a small part of the Spumante area, which we call Sparkling Lab, where we make tests. And every year we try to produce and develop techniques and methods for re-fermentation that are different and special, so that they can then have developments or not on the market. You know that enologists should not only work but also have fun and innovate and try to do something innovative in the wineries. Otherwise, would they just get stuck into always the usual pattern? So we go from 6,000 liters but up to 90,000 liters. So can be 8,000 bottles versus 120,000 bottles. But we have the Spumante lab. We call it the Sala del Cristo because we have 33 autoclaves which are 33,000 liters. As to the trends in Asian markets, well, Asia, of course, is a huge continent. Of course, when it comes to Far East, well, already in the choice of the wines we've tasted today, already this reflects what I see and I understand from information from the local Far East operators and players. And then we have to make some differences. Certainly a common element is preference for sweet wines because those who approach sparkling wines and start drinking sparkling wines for the first time maybe prefer wines with a high residual sugar such as Moscato, and then maybe little by little try other categories with less sugar. We also have to make differences always by regions. For instance, in Japan, I noticed a lot of interest for Brut, the Brut category, even though when I went the last time in June, I have also found some consumers who also appreciated the extra dry wines. But in general, in Japan, they prefer the Brut Spumante, whereas in China, they prefer the extra dry wines, which are the most popular and appreciated. And then there could be many other things to say, but unfortunately I don't have time to dwell on that. I hope this was a good answer to your question. Of course, feel free to ask more if you have any. Yes, from Tokyo, they ask the percentage of production of organic Prosecco out of the total. Valdo is 3% of the total production. It's growing, that's true. So it's growing both on the European markets and international market. In Northern Europe, they are becoming more and more popular. But it's always very low because organic farming has costs, so it has big costs to get good raw materials, good grapes. So costs are 20-25% higher. And so then if you then add a markup, that's not understood because Sicilian wine, for instance, Sicilian producers have a much better climate than us, even though it's been changing. So it's raining a lot in Sicily too recently, but for them, organic farming is much easier. They don't need to do anything special. So it's much easier for them. Whereas it's more expensive for the Conegliano Valdobbiadene and Prosecco area. And this increase in production costs cannot be reflected on the wine because the consumer don't want to pay more, few euros more for an organic Prosecco than a conventional Prosecco. $250,000, 300,000 bottles. More questions? From Hong Kong, they are asking whether you had any challenges as a winery, I know the Valdo area, really in relation to global warming, like other Italian winemaking regions, and what are the most the best sellers in Asia, and whether there was an increase in sales. I will tell them personally for prices when I go to Hong Kong. However, let me ask Gianfranco to answer the first question. Well, unfortunately, this year, these very high temperatures and many days with maximum temperatures above average, which is the most impactful thing, make us think that we have to go back to our origin of, so with more organic substances, manure, for instance, so to have more a sort of sponge effect to protect the roots from long periods of drought. As to the leaves, of course, we try to keep our bunches under the leaves, so we don't eliminate the leaves too much, because our are all south-facing vineyards, and so leaves are removed in the northern part, but not in the southern part. And then certainly we have to think of different farming techniques probably in the future, but what matters the most is to have water on our hills, because we can have the rescue irrigation, but if I don't have the pipes, the hoses and the pipelines, I cannot, I can lose my production in years like this. As to the increase in the production cost, we're working with the consortium and with the Brentella Consortium to go back to a project that was started back in the 1980s to create basins as possible, provided environmentalists agree with that. So basins of water at the top of the hills, to use this water as rescue irrigation, to ensure that the plant, the vines and the grapes can mature appropriately, not like this year that have suffered a lot. And as to what was the best sellers in Asia, these are the ones we sell the best. Of course, Cuvée di Boy, 1926, and Moscato in particular. As to an increase in prices, as you all know, we are experiencing a very tough moment. And unfortunately, also the winemaking business is no exception to the rule. And Gianfranco told me that this year was a very complex year, also because of some pests, some diseases. I don't remember how many vineyards were damaged. Oh yes, we made an estimate, an assessment. It must be from 10 to 15% of vineyards, because there is Flaviestance Doré, and when it's the summer is very hot, this insect pinches the grapes and infects the grapes. And the only way to get rid of Flaviestance Doré is to eliminate the affected vines. But then replanting a new plant means that you have then to wait for 5 to 6 years, because it takes time before the plant can give us the grapes, of course. And this is a problem that is, we have environmental problems and also inflation problems. And of course, this is, of course, has an impact on price. Unfortunately, we don't, it's not good to talk about these problems during tastings. I have another question from Shenzhen. Is Moscato DOC or DOP? No, it has no denomination. It has just the name, Moscato, and there is no DOC or DOCG. That's it. More questions from you here in the room? So I'd like to thank Gianfranco. Thank you very much. for participating. Thanks, Gianfranco, for this masterclass. Very, very interesting and complete. So we are sharp on time, and I would like to thank our FISAR sommelier, and also a round applause to them. And also to those who are in Shenzhen and Tokyo, especially Shenzhen, because it's not easy to travel in China these days. Thank you.